All right, so I came across this thing on Reddit where apparently some OSS project is holding its users hostage. At least that's how it's described in the issue linked right here. And so a little surprising, but this is the headlining. I think it's called Mock. In its latest version, extract and send my email to the cloud via sponsor link, ? So I've just updated Mock, GitHub's Mock in one of our projects and got a warning after a rebuild about me not having installed a GitHub sponsor app. After a bit of investigation, it looks like Mock, starting from version 4.20. How could you spoil that version? Okay, the crime committed here is already so much worse than I realized. Like, how could you do that? How could you do that on that? Does include a .NET analyzer that scans your local Git config and on build, gets your email address, and sends it to some service hosted in Azure to check whether or not you are a sponsor. This blog post has some more details. Oh, we're going to read it. This is a bit scary. I've read much about such supply chain attack vectors in the past, but just updating a project and suddenly noticing a data extraction was unexpected. Are there any opinions on sponsor link yet? Is that something dangerous, or am I missing something here? Okay, so let's check out before we go down into the comments. Let's go read that blog post. All right, sponsor link. Trying something newish for OSS sustainability. Okay, so I get this. This makes sense. For anyone that's ever done open source, knows for a fact that open source is perhaps the worst way to make money. I think you could make more money on OnlyFans in general than open source, and probably less work. Open source sustainability is a tricky topic. I would kindly refer you to the thoughtful post by Eric Sink and Six. Okay, yeah. Suffice it to say, we all struggle to make sustainable propositions where we can dedicate full time to the projects we love. Also, there doesn't seem to be a perfect answer for all scenarios, so there's always pros and cons. Okay, so hold on. This is all this one introducing sponsor link. I believe most fellow developers don't have an issue with giving away $1 or $2 a month for a project they enjoy using and delivers actual value, and I'm quite positive that a couple dollars a month is an affordable proposition for an Argentinian. It surely isn't a crazy thing to pretty much anyone. Okay, so we're kind of looking at his expectations here. His expectations is everybody won't have a problem with this. I am a firm believer that supporting your fellow developers is the best thing done personally. Having your company pay for software surely doesn't feel quite as rewarding as pay from your own pocket. Feel the reward, man. And it surely feels different for me, too. We really don't need to expense our employers for a couple bucks a month, right? That's why Netflix doesn't pay for my Netflix subscription. The goal of Sponsor Leak is to connect in the most direct way possible your sponsorship with your library author sponsor account. And since the place where you spend most of the time enjoying your fellow developers' open source projects is in an IDE, Visual Studio, or Writer, classic. Those are the two options, if you're wondering. I figured that that's the first place you should, where you should be reminded that either. Okay, you're an awesome backer, and the project is alive and well thanks to you. Okay. Thank you for supporting Sponsorable Lib with your sponsorship of developed. Wait, what? Devlooped. Oh, a Devlooped. You're a true hero. There we go. Okay, sorry. I read that all wrong. Thank you for supporting Sponsorable Lib with your sponsorship of Devloop. Okay. Look at that. You get some nice errors. Okay, so then there's a bunch of stuff about how it works, blah, 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 blah. Apparently, it goes like this. Initially, I built sponsor link for .NET via the NuGet package. Okay, if a user isn't using an editor or there is no network, there's nothing to do, so bail quickly. A library author runs git config get user email during a build to get the current user's config email. There's no git or email. There's nothing to do. Just a quick, snappy head operation sent to Azure blob storage to a relative URL ending in apps user email. If it 404s, that means the user hasn't installed the sponsor link GitHub app. Okay. If the previous check succeeds, a second quick operation, speedy, is sent to Azure blob storage to send URL ending sponsor account user email. If it 404, that means the user isn't sponsoring the given account. Oh my goodness. Bit of quick head right here. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I'm all for sponsoring people on GitHub. I'm all for getting these things done. I'm all for all of this. I love the idea of trying to remind people, because I'm sure most people would do it out of like like realizing, like, if you were to walk up to anybody and be like, hey, you really like this little thing, I don't know, Echo for Golang servers, and you're like, yeah, I really like that. Would you sponsor that for like $1? Could you give us $1 a month? I think most developers would be like, yeah, I give you $1 a month. Yeah, sure, I could do that, no problem. But this ain't it. I can tell you right away that this ain't it, right? Like, what is happening here is crazy. This is crazy. I mean, first off, they assume you're using VS Code or Rider. Okay, already. I mean, I am deeply offended. Okay. Second off, you just wrote malware. This feels like supply chain attack, like the person said. Okay, so a little wild there. I didn't know about that. And then on top of it, there's this right here, which is sponsor link and supporting OSS more broadly. So this is from Mock, right? Trying to aggregate the various issues into one to collect feedback. I invite everyone to read the sponsorship link announcement. Okay, so that must have been the one I just read, which is this one. Yeah, that's the exact same one. Okay. And to understand the intention behind it. No nefarious purpose, I promise. With that in mind, I'm obviously open to suggestions to help achieve both your goals and mine. Note, 420 removes sponsor links since it breaks macOS and Linux restore. I'll take the opportunity to collect more feedback. Okay. Okay. Thoughtful blog post here. So we're going to do... so obviously there's some sort of blog post here for that. We'll look at that. My two main issues. You're collecting the email addresses. Even though you say you only send hashes, you send those hashes to your infrastructure. We don't know what you do with these. You could store these hashes. We can't verify it's your infrastructure. And at some point, compare these hashes to hashes you or someone else with access to the email address hashes collected from somewhere else. As a non-evil example, you could use this list to give authority to issues created in this repo based on if the hashed public email of the GitHub user matches a user on your sponsor list or on your non-sponsor list, since you could save whether or not a given hash. Yeah. Oh, man, yeah. And you could also start building out your user info list with other information you can gather from GitHub users. This is not a justified use of the email address we configure on our local machine. So for another example, any employer in Europe would also be forced to move away from Mock. Yeah, I was about to say, this sounds like this sounds like a immediate Europe blackout. Man confessed to malware. SponsorLink is obfuscated and closed source. It connects remotely to your infrastructure. Yes, there you go. That is also really, that's weird to me, right? If you're going to do this, at least put it out in the open for people to read so they feel at least somewhat better with it. If you expect your open source project to make money, you are making a mistake. Fact, you or some external entity could modify SponsorLink and or your private infrastructure with malicious intent, and we would not have an easy way of verifying the changes made. Well, even if that, okay, let's say there is an open source version of SponsorLink. That doesn't actually mean that whatever's being built or sent to or anything is actually what's being used as the open source version. React has their open source front, and then there's like a whole thing on the other side that they do. Right? So that, like, even to remotely say that open source fixes these problems, they don't. It's basically a supply chain malware in the making. It doesn't matter that it only runs on developer machines at the moment, either because there's tons of developers who publish from Visual Studios, and yes, the horror. But not only that, but I mean, this really just made a great example of some weird supply chain things you can do. Kind of wild, right? I know another evil OSS project that is holding me hostage. I have Vim open. I could not escape. Yeah, classic. Okay, so it sounds like it sounds like is this guy has this great idea. I'm sure there's another reading. I swear there has to be another reading somewhere else. A deep dive into sponsor link, implications for open source and privacy. 2 minutes. What? Okay. Where's the deep dive? This doesn't look deep dive. This looks like little dive, but maybe it's like, really condensed thoughts. In the world of open source software, there's a balance between creating freely available tools and finding a way to sustain the hard work that goes into developing them. One recent solution that's gaining traction is SponsorLink. Introduced at, where's it gaining this traction from, and who's doing this? Introduced with the aim of promoting the sponsorship of open source projects, specifically with popular .NET testing library Mock in its 4.20 version. Is this actually gaining traction, or is this just a singular large library? What is SponsorLink? In essence, SponsorLink was created by Daniel Kuzalina, oh man, poor guy, aka Kazoo, the creator of Mock, in an initiative to encourage developers to financially support their fellow developers who produce valuable open source tools. By embedding SponsorLink in a library, developers can send gentle reminders to their users about the possibility of sponsorship straight within the development environment, like Visual Studio or Rider. Okay, real talk. How would you feel? How would you feel if your IDE reminded you? All right, let's just say that there's no sponsor link, right? There's none of this crap that reads your emails or validates any of those things. But instead, once a month, VS Code, NeoVim, whatever goes, hey, by the way, don't forget to sponsor your open source projects. Here's a list of ones that you could sponsor. Right, it doesn't take your email, doesn't do any of that. You mean Sublime. Sublime is not sponsorship. Sublime is asking if you would please pay for the product, and you say no every time. Reminders, no different from ads. Suck these nuts. I got a fun story about that here in just a moment. I'd like to get that warning when I finally get a credit card, and you're old enough. Okay, you're a young guy. Primogen, I'm okay with it, actually. NPM Fund, kind of like NPM Fund, but who looks at NPM install afterwards? Come on. 16 packages are looking for funding. You're like, yeah, got them. Yeah. What does it mean to have daily averages? Who's collecting that information? All of a sudden, this became a lot more kind of terrifyingly. Who's collecting this information? How much information does Visual Studio or Rider collect for someone to know that they're using a package? What does it mean to use? It's from NuGet. So is NuGet tracking how you're using things? Ooh. Ooh. No, downloads I get. Downloads you can track because it's a request to your server. That's not what I'm saying. That's totally reasonable. It's 103 daily, average daily. Oh, I thought that was usage. Sorry, my bad. Okay, that's just downloading. Okay, downloading I can understand because, I mean, you have stats about every URL that's probably visited, so you can kind of get it. Okay, it's just download. It's just downloads, not usage. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, that's generally how I feel. You know, I feel bad for this guy. Obviously, 100 and some thousand downloads a day, a very, very popular open source library, millions upon millions of usages, all that kind of stuff. And yet, at the end of the day, you're not making really a dime from anything. Does that feel bad? I mean, I understand that you feel bad about that. But you know, like, I hate to also be the asshole here. I am the asshole in this situation. But you got to get over yourself, right? Like, if you're going to go OSS, like, you should just realize you are getting nothing. You are getting nothing from doing OSS. The reason you should do OSS is because you are getting nothing and you're just improving people's lives, right? If you think that you should get paid massively from OSS work, I'm sorry, right? I'm sorry that you feel that way, but the reality disagrees with you thoroughly, okay? Like, you know, because at the end of the day, that's just not how it works. Now, TJ in this chat, he works on NeoVim, and he does a lot of stuff with NeoVim. By the way, TJ, if you want to jump in and give me like a little what's what about all this stuff, I'd love to hear kind of your perspective on this, because you know, I may have a bad perspective here. Like, I've encouraged and said it would be a great idea. Front End Masters gave stuff to NeoVim. I think they gave $100,000 or something like that to NeoVim. I can't remember. If TJ knows the number, that'd be great. There's like what is it, Open Collective? Yeah, I mean, they give out, like, I personally think this is one of the ways that you should be giving out, which is that you give out via this. You know, like, I love when I see companies doing it, because companies are the ones that actually use all this stuff, right? They're the ones that actually do things. Okay, they only gave $7,000. I forgot how much they gave. My bad. I must have mixed up this number with that number. But they still gave a month worth of full-time work to pay somebody to do great stuff, right? Like, to me, this seems like this is the real viable way, is having companies that can pay for this, right? To me, that seems like the most viable way to have it happen. But again, I don't think anyone on NeoVim is sitting there waiting for a paycheck, right? Does Netflix give back to OSS? Go ahead, go look at our OSS. We have so much OSS given back. We literally hold free BSD. We make it work. All right, hold on, TJ.
Yellow.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me just get you up here. Can you talk again, just so I can make sure you're in the stream?
Hello, testing 1, 2, 3.
I'm gonna make you a little bit louder. There you go. Do it again.
Nice. What's up, chat?
All right, I think you should be about good now. All right, let me get you in here, because you obviously work on NeoVim. You have a much different perspective than me, most likely.
I mean, you're kind of an open source guy. Didn't you do like Falcor or something? That's got a lot of stars on GitHub.
TJ, remember when we used to be friends?
See, guys, it was nice knowing you. I guess it was the end of self-promo in this chat.
Remember when we used to, I used to love you, and I thought you were a great guy?
Remember when I got really great rates for my advertising, just memes? And then now this. I've made a terrible error.
You have. All right, there we go. But I mean, okay, so like I'll give my quick, like, this is what I've done with open source. My small time doing open source, I mean, it involved just 20 hours a week just answering just questions. Stack Overflow started getting questions. That was kind of a basic expectation, was me to find those things and start like bringing them up. It was just wild. By the way, you just got your ban removed on.
I saw that.
Yeah. So there you go.
Can't ban me here.
Can't ban him out of this chat. So here's the question, I guess. Oh, hold on. Can I ban you this way?
What? Did you just mute me or something?
No, I haven't muted you. I don't. Yeah. Get out of here, TJ. All right. Oh wait, I just wait. No, you're back. All right, so
okay, nice.
Can you just tell us a little bit about your open source experience and all that? Come over here, baby.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess like a lot of you probably know me from doing NeoVim stuff. That was the first project that I ever did any open source work for. And then like over the years, I've built a lot of features for NeoVim, and then got added to NeoVim core. And then I've also done several sort of like other plugins, or contributed to various other plugins, most notably creating Telescope, I guess.
Yeah, Telescope's
I also work at a company that is like, well, you wouldn't necessarily say like open. It depends on your definition of open source, right? As in like Sourcegraph is source available, right? But like it's not FOSS, like it's not free and open source, but yeah.
So what's your most notable feature you've done for NeoVim? Something that I would recognize?
The LSP, I wrote a lot of that.
All right, there you go. If for those that are not familiar with LSPs, that's what makes autocomplete
or if you
work.
like Lua, like I did a lot of the Lua integrations, not like the first embedding, but like turning different Vim features on in Lua.
Yep. Okay.
Basically, like auto commands, or like being able to pass functions back and forth between Vim script and NeoVim, things like that.
I remember watching you do the auto commands, and you were getting pronounced by C. With a stack allocated buffer, and being like, why is it changing? And you're like, yeah, well, it's the stack allocations, baby.
Yeah, it was in a loop with some old macros and some other stuff happening, and you could not find out where things were. There was a lot of global state and magic happening, but
I felt bad for you watching it.
It was a good time. It was I learned a lot of stuff from it, so that was good.
Yeah.
Because it didn't make a lot of money on it, that's right.
How many dollars did you make on doing LSP?
Oh, for LSP, 0.
So much like the library LSP 0, you were also at LSP 0.
LSP 0, yeah, it represents how much money I made.
Oh, no.
I think I've been paid twice for NeoVim. One was for I think when we did like some stuff with diagnostics, like the second time around, but actually both times were after I had my baby, and I had separate kids, right? And like I had a month off, and we only pay people to work on NeoVim for like NeoVim core stuff if you can do a whole month full time, basically. Like it just makes it a lot simpler to manage because we don't have enough money to just pay people to do stuff all the time, right? So it's basically like that was I did a bunch of stuff for diagnostics, and then I did Vim 9 JIT as like an exploratory project to see if we could translate Vim 9 script into Lua that could run inside of NeoVim.
Did you ever get pretty far with the Vim script 9?
There's currently Lua code in NeoVim that's on your computer right now that was translated by it. So yeah, it works.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your opinion on this whole debacle with sponsor link?
Yeah.
We can first start off, I guess, maybe with
Well, I'll give you my hottest take about it that I think is just funny, which is basically like you're already using .NET and you care that someone has your email address. Like, I think you're just barking up the wrong tree. It's just like, am I wrong? Okay. I'm not saying it was good or he did the right thing, but who is in charge here?
Using Microsoft products on a Microsoft platform, being like, they're taking our information.
I've got my email address. Do they know what they can do with that? You've already put the microchip in your brain. You know, like you're worried about some random guy having your email address. So
that's a pretty good one. Okay, that's a pretty fun one. All right, there is a slight bit of irony there with Microsoft, like so thoroughly getting as much information, always pushing that envelope.
Yeah.
From you. By the way, Microsoft did, I don't know if you know this, but they have started like an ads department. They are running ads. They have their own ads aggregator, all that kind of stuff. So trust me, they're not doing all this kind of stuff for free. They've been collecting data for the last 5 years, and they've been piloting out their ads program for a little while. Anyways, because they want to overtake what Google's doing and still be useful with ChatGPT. Anyways, so besides for that,
so that's
part,
sort of like the first part where I just sort of see like sometimes I feel that there's like an outrage bandwagon, right? Where it's like, oh, this guy did something stupid. It's pretty stupid to crawl people's computers for personal info and then upload it, right? Like that does seem stupid.
Yeah.
Like it's not the method that I would do. Although it would be cool if, you know, like GitHub or some of these other places that are particularly like, I get like why Patreon wouldn't have like a NuGet package to check if somebody's a sponsor. But like why, like if you're a GitHub sponsor, some easy way to check whether people are, so you could give them additional features or things like that, like where you could register that you want to be able to do that, right? Some other way where you're like actively taking a step to say like, oh, I want to make it so that people can know that I'm their sponsor. Here's the account that would be associated with that, or like my company account or something like that. Those things seem like it would be cool and good and ways that people could provide, you know, better monetization like strategies for developers. So one suggestion that I saw is like a really easy way to get, you know, like private NuGet packages, right? Where you get like a pre-release, you get to test it early, provide feedback, you know, like things that are worth money that cost time, you know? But so yes, and I also think putting stuff into people's builds is a bad strategy. And also, I don't think you saw it, but I'm pretty sure if you weren't a sponsor, it added like a second of build time. I don't think you saw that.
I didn't go through the comments yet on this, and so it must be on the comment side. But that's
there's like literally a thread.sleep. I'm sure if you like search thread.sleep on one of these, it's like,
oh no. So it had an inverse. It had a punishment. If you're not a sponsor, you get slow builds.
Yes, that was my understanding, which I think is like it's just not like, regardless of like the ethics of a bunch of the stuff, okay, so I'll take a step back. It probably shouldn't be surprising, because the thing that people don't get is like making a popular open source library has literally no overlap in required skills oftentimes of like being a smart marketer or knowing how to deal with people.
Yeah,
like, those are like two.
Harpoon's a great example. Harpoon's a great example.
Like, whoever
of this.
made that cool plugin must be an idiot, though. Never see him make any progress on the plugin anymore. So I just sort of sometimes think like people sort of assume that, you know, this guy has the same like level of lawyers as like Microsoft and is trying to like outwit you at every turn and collect all your data to harvest. And he's just like, dude, it seems like Git keeps your email. What if we like use that to see if you're a GitHub sponsor? You know, like that seems more likely to me than he's trying to be like, yes, I'm going to harvest all your info and then sell it to the highest bidder.
Yeah, that's kind of my take. When I read his sponsorship link, like when you read it, it's so like upbeat and like, oh yeah, dude, guess what? We're gonna finally get people. You don't mind spending $1, and I know you don't. And he's right. People don't really like. I don't. If some project that I was using was like, hey, can you give us a couple of dollars? It'd be really useful. Right. Like
or if you're like an officially recommended project by Microsoft in their docs, and Microsoft's never paid you a penny, which is my understanding. I think I can find. I had a
I
quote.
love that link.
See if I can,
yeah.
Well, so I think he said, you have a massive user base in massive companies. Like, as he's quoting somebody, he says, you know how many of those massive user bases have sponsored my Merc and those massive companies? Never heard of them. Only AWS contributed once. And people in the thread literally like saying, at times it may feel like everyone's benefiting from you and you don't get anything in return for it. This is true. But remember, you have benefited from your work by building a name for yourself, which might open up new opportunities. Literal paid in exposure is people's like is people's response. Like, dude, you're getting paid in exposure, which I of course agree with Judo that if you think you're going to make a bunch of money from open source, you're probably not going to. So it's a bad strategy to try and do. But like the consumers of it in this world are like, dude, you've got opportunities for it, you know? And
I'm going to play the devil's advocate. I actually agree with the users. I actually think the best thing you should expect from open source is exposure. I'm going to throw that out there.
That's probably the best thing that you should expect, but that doesn't mean that like it feels like a good trade.
It doesn't. It's not a good trade. So if you go into it with the expectation, like, I will only get street cred from doing this, at least you're not disappointed at the end of the day, because you will get street cred. And unfortunately, this poor fella, KZU, it definitely got even extra street cred after this move. Filled with
so
street
basically,
cred.
like, you know, what people should realize is you should expect to make like less money than you do working like minimum wage somewhere. Like, I could make more money working at Taco Bell down the street and save a bunch of extra money every month by probably getting free food there instead of having to pay for it. So it'd be like kind of a double win. Then I'd probably make way more money in that than I have in open source. But that doesn't mean that it feels good, especially when, you know, like Microsoft puts you in the recommended stuff for the language that they make. Then you're like, at no point along the line you feel like, you know, any sort of spot. So that's where I get like what it feels like, which is really it can feel very crummy in that situation.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Leo over here said companies should be required to sponsor OSS. What do you think about that? As somebody who probably would benefit off this rule, right? If there was this rule, you would probably directly benefit off of it.
Well, like required by what? Like ethically or by like?
Let's just say the
government?
United States government says from here on out, any company that resides in the United States must pay money to use open source.
Oh heck yeah, because I'm gonna start name squatting on Rust crates, and I'm about to make so much money. There's no perverse incentive, so I'm just gonna make sure that I make Rust crates that depend on other Rust crates that I own, and I'm gonna have 95% of your dependencies are from me. Get wrecked.
Yeah,
I'll take your tax dollars.
Every single function you've ever written would immediately become its own Rust crate. Yeah, this Rust crate does depend on 9,000 different Rust crates. I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm really
but it's the
9,
best 000. One. You can tell because it has 9,000 dependents. They're all me though.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's obviously, anytime you put like a requirement like that, you put a perverse incentive in place as well. Right?
Yeah. So I think that like I'm not a big fan of trying to like require companies to do it. I think you can like help influence that by encouraging your company to give some amount. So like at various times, like SourceGraph has given money to NeoVim because we also pay for like JetBrains like subscriptions for people. So it's kind of like that's just fair, right? So if it's like we can say, oh, we are allocating money for editors, why not like allocate some money for some of the free and like open editors that people are using as well? So that part
That seems like an easy win you
seems
could get into.
right. And you'd be surprised, like if 1% of devs like convince their companies that trying to set something up like that, even for just like one-time things and stuff, that's actually a lot of like money for a project generally. You know what I'm saying? So there's some cool stuff I think like in that space, but that's harder for things like dependencies and stuff. Like you maintain some thankless dependency that's like 8 dependencies deep. You're the only one writing the like HTTP crate or something like that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's like flawless, and everybody uses it. It's difficult to figure out how you can get sponsorship to those kinds of people. I think finding other ways like support contracts or like I mentioned, maybe private repos that get sort of pre-releases, or being able to like only people who are sponsors are allowed to make issues. Like I don't know, there's like a lot of stuff you could do that like answering issues isn't fun, and people who don't pay for anything generally don't make good quality issues comparatively.
Yep.
Right.
You'd assume more skin in the game when you are paying for something.
Right. So there's just like a lot of you make your job a lot more fun as a maintainer, because people who like actually pay like make that happen. And then so I think there are various ways that you can try and monetize some of it, especially like as your project gets bigger and you're like, wow, actually like people are getting a lot of value for this. Can we find a way that we can exchange value, right? Which I think is like a good sort of way to think about that. Yeah.
All right. So I actually think, so me personally, I think one of the best ways company gives back is this right here. This has happened many times throughout my time at Netflix, even to me and to other people, is that you find a library you really like and you give actual engineering hours, because those are the most expensive. To me, this just seems like one of the best ways is to have like corporate sponsors in work, make the library better, answering issues, becoming an active community member, and that's kind of an expectation. I like this one. I think I always will like that one. But I mean, kind of going back to like what is most used and kind of talking about what you're doing. Look at this. So weekly downloads for React, 20.6 million. Weekly downloads for Is Even, 260.
Nice.
So we're talking about 1,000th. Do you think that Is Even is 1,000th as worthy for money as React?
I think it's 10 times more. I think I get a lot more value out of Is Even than I would from React.
Facts. But I mean, like, just facts. But like, just think about it for a second, right? Left pad. Right. We'll go with left pad. Do you think that every? Wait, where's the proper one?
Right. Well, that's basically why I think like any strategy that you try and do like algorithmically, tends to lead to really bad or like incentives, just like any incentive that you have, at your work generally for like just a straight metric that affects people's pay is like a bad strategy. Oh, lines of code added. Okay, well now people write lots of code. Oh, lines of code deleted. Okay, well now, like all these number of commits per day, number of issue, right? Whatever one you're going to pick, they end to like people will just adjust their behavior so that it benefits them, which is like, of course, what's going to happen, right? So if you say, oh, it's number of issues is like a demoter to your thing, QA will just bundle all your issues into one thing for you, or something like that. Or like you'll just bundle 8 things into one issue.
Yeah.
And then say like, see, I only made 1 bug, even though it's 30 bugs, like, or like if it's tickets closed, then you make a crap ton of tiny tickets and then you complete all those. If what you're interested in is gaming the system instead of just like doing a good job, right? So that's
that's always the danger of this thing, which is what will happen. No matter how you feel about it, that is the inevitable outcome, and I've seen it over and over again. At Netflix, at one point, docs became a very important kind of way of engineering, and all of a sudden, there's 9 million docs about every decision being made, and it becomes the impossible sifting through things to find out what actually is happening, because one doc has 6 docs going off of it, and each doc has its owners, and like it becomes a street cred. Like whenever you incentivize something as some way to relate your importance, that ends up happening whether you like it or not. And just kind of taking this little this is odd, is even. They are sister packages, and one of them does depend on the other, and I forget. But this one right here has 262. The other one has 400 and something, so like 600 something. So like for every dollar React should deserve in funding under some sort of uniform algorithmic principle, is even and is odd would receive 0.3 cents. That doesn't seem fair to me. React is largely more useful despite how we feel about it. And it would just, it's like ridiculous that's a real thing, right? And so, it just feels funny that's like, you can't solve it that way.
Yeah, so that's kind of the thing where it feels like it's very difficult to have some algorithmic solution or some top-down approach. Instead, I think a better strategy is like, you personally can go to your company and try and have them pay for things that give them value, or you can personally do that as well.
Yeah. And that's what the guy was thinking with Sponsored Link. He thought you wouldn't care. Give $1, you.
Right. Yeah. What would be cool is like, I think there are other options too, you know, like, oh, I want to give $10 a month and it gets split between the things that I use, right? And like maybe, you know, GitHub or somebody else could facilitate those kinds of things. So
I think that would be really good. I think that's actually probably the best idea I've ever heard.
Right. Or, you know, you get to put some allocation for some things ahead of time, and then you leave, you know, 50% of it to be distributed evenly between, you know, your just straight up dependencies, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, so I know that I mostly use React and I mostly use, you know, this or something. I mostly use HTMX and I mostly use Dream, right? And then like, so I'm going to put those two with 50% and then the rest of them are fine. It is true that some companies don't know how to expense it or write it off, but I think like you can just write it. You don't have to write it off. You can just like expense it as a, GitHub has a way for companies to do that now as a separate process, is my understanding. And it's like, in my mind, it's just like paying for other software, right? Like, so
I really do like that idea of GitHub. Like if you have projects on GitHub, you have open source stuff on GitHub, you have any repos on GitHub, you can just say, hey, scan my repos for which ones have, like, weight it by stars, weight it by whatever, right? Weight it by commits made to it, however you want to weight it. And I will give $100. You just automatically funnel this to each of the, you know, top 10 things I use in OSS. I actually think that is a much more feasible way, because this, like, these little micro sponsorships all over feel way overwhelming. And most people don't want to do the same thing. They have
a lot of turnover.
Yeah, they have a lot of turnover. It'd be way easier just to do like just something small like that. All right. Cool.
So
well, hey,
that's my take. Ultimately, I just find it hilarious that it's happening in .NET. So I'll continue to laugh at all the people telling me to use F#, and I'll keep laughing at them and doing OCaml instead. Okay, bye, chat.
I love the take. Bye. Look at TJ. He's trying to exit. There we go. He exited. Get him out of here. The name is the OSSogen.